It started as just another celebrity interview until Samuel L. Jackson looked into the camera and said something about Trump that made the entire country pause. It began with a single sentence that froze every late-night viewer in their tracks. Samuel L. Jackson, sitting across from host Brian Kelly on the Nightline Forum, leaned forward, eyes locked on the lens, and said, "I heard things come out of that man's mouth that no president should ever say, not in private, not in public, not ever." The studio gasped, Brian froze. No one knew whether to laugh or brace for what came next. Samuel wasn't joking. For a moment, silence fell so thick it felt almost physical, every breath in the room part of the stillness. He remained calm but piercing, every word dropping like a stone in water. Brian finally spoke, breaking the tension. "Samuel, are you saying you personally heard President Trump make comments like that?" Samuel didn't hesitate. "I'm not saying like that. I'm saying exactly that. I was standing right there when he said it." The audience stirred, a few nervous laughs escaping, while Brian tried to regain control. But Samuel was already deep into it, his voice carrying the conviction that made him one of Hollywood's most commanding presences. He described attending a celebrity golf event months earlier at Trump National Golf Club in Palm Beach. It was supposed to be a charity event, cameras, cocktails, polite smiles, but according to Samuel, what he heard went beyond anything he'd ever heard from a sitting president. Brian's cue card slipped from his hand as producers gestured frantically behind the glass, trying to steer the segment back on track. It was too late. Samuel continued. "Hollywood only loves me when I make them money. The rest of the time, they pretend to be woke." He laughed, then added something he couldn't repeat on TV about who he believed truly controlled the industry. "I'll just say this," he continued, "it wasn't pretty." A stunned audience member gasped audibly. The camera cut to Brian, his usual charm replaced by visible shock. Samuel didn't blink. "You can't lead a country when you don't respect half the people living in it." The crowd erupted, applause mixing with disbelief. Some clapped in agreement, others in sheer shock. Producers cut to commercial early, but the damage was done. That short segment would replay endlessly across social media within hours. When the broadcast resumed, Brian tried to lighten the mood, but Samuel had already moved miles ahead of the script. He wasn't there to entertain, he was there to be heard. "People keep saying celebrities should stay out of politics," he said, voice rising slightly. "But when politics walks right into your life, into your industry, into your dinner table, you don't have the privilege of silence anymore." The audience gave a standing ovation. Even Brian had to smile, though his producer's voice was probably screaming in his earpiece. After the show, Samuel left quietly, avoiding interviews. Cameras followed him to the black SUV waiting outside, but he didn't say another word. His silence spoke louder than the broadcast itself. Clips of the interview spread across every platform within minutes. On Twitter, hashtags like #SamuelSaidIt and #Jackson vs. Trump climbed trending lists. Millions watched, some cheering, others furious. In Los Angeles, talk show hosts scrambled to rewrite their monologues. In Washington, aides at the White House began drafting statements. Samuel hadn't just spoken, he had thrown the first punch in what would become one of the decade's biggest political storms. Those closest to him said he had been planning to speak for a while, just waiting for the right moment. That night, the country went to bed with one question echoing across living rooms, group chats, and newsrooms alike. What exactly did the president say that left Samuel L. Jackson, a man known for fearlessness, looking genuinely disgusted on live TV? Before anyone could answer, the story about that Palm Beach golf event began to resurface, taking a turn no one expected. The morning after the interview, news outlets scrambled. Every detail of that day became front-page material. Reporters dug into guest lists, photos, and archives, searching for confirmation. Those who were there already had the memory burned into their minds that it was late spring, a humid morning at Trump National Golf Club. The sky was glaringly bright, the air heavy, the kind of day when the Florida sun made everyone squint. Celebrities, donors, and politicians milled about with drinks in hand, smiling for photos they would later pretend not to remember. Samuel wasn't there for politics, he was there because of an old friend, retired athlete Jerome Tate, who had convinced him to come. "It's for the kids' hospital," Jerome said. "One game, a few pictures, and you're out." It sounded simple, but nothing about that day turned out to be simple. Upon arrival, Samuel noticed the crowd leaned heavily toward executives rather than athletes. Suits, cigars, and whispered deals filled the air. Trump was already holding court near the first tee, red cap, wide grin, surrounded by donors hanging on every word. Jerome nudged Samuel. "There he is. You ready?" Samuel gave a side glance. "I came to hit golf balls, not talk politics," he said. But Trump had other plans. The president spotted Samuel and waved him over. "Sam, my favorite actor. Come here, you're with us today," he said, patting him on the back as cameras flashed. Samuel forced a polite smile. "Sure thing, Mr. President." The round started off friendly enough, light jokes and golf banter, photographers trailing behind. But halfway through, the tone shifted. Trump began speaking about Hollywood, the media, and those who pretended to hate him. Samuel stayed mostly quiet until Trump said something that made him tighten his grip on the club. "You know what's funny?" Trump leaned close, voice low enough for only a few to hear. "They act like they're against me. But when it's time to make money, they all come running. Hollywood doesn't care who's president, they care who pays." Jerome gave Samuel a quick look, silently urging him not to respond, but Trump wasn't finished. "And another thing," he said with a chuckle, "you ever notice who runs all those studios, who writes those scripts? It's not who people think." Samuel turned toward him slowly. "What's that supposed to mean?" Trump smirked. "You know what I mean. You've been in the business long enough." The air went cold. The Secret Service nearby shifted slightly, sensing the tension. Jerome cleared his throat, trying to move things along. "Hey, anyone up for another round?" Trump laughed, waved at a few cameras, and walked toward the next hole, but Samuel remained still, eyes locked on the man's back. Later at the clubhouse, the conversation picked up again, this time with more people around. Trump, feeling relaxed, spoke freely about actors, directors, and race in entertainment. He tossed out comments like grenades, each one drawing uneasy glances. At one point, a producer joked about Hollywood types being too sensitive. Trump replied, "That's because they've convinced themselves they're the victims. But they're the ones with all the money, all the power, they just don't want to admit it." Samuel leaned back, observing. "You really believe that?" Trump shrugged. "I call it how I see it. People love when I say what they're thinking." "No," Samuel said quietly, "you say what you want people to think. There's a difference." For a moment, the room went silent again, just like the studio months later. Trump gave him a tight smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "You've always been a little too serious, Sam. That's why you'll never get it. This is entertainment, all of it." That was the moment Samuel decided he'd had enough. He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and said, "You're right about one thing. It is entertainment, until someone gets hurt." He walked out of the clubhouse, cameras following once more, though that footage never made it to the evening news. Outside, Jerome caught up to him. "You okay?" he asked. Samuel nodded. "I'm fine. Just tired of pretending." Neither of them spoke about that day again, not until the interview months later, when Samuel told Brian Kelly that what he had heard was beyond anything he'd ever heard from a sitting president. That was the conversation he had been referencing, the one where Trump dropped his guard and said the kind of things people only say when they think no one will call them out. By finally speaking, Samuel knew he wasn't just putting himself in the middle of a storm, he was lighting the fuse on purpose. While Samuel tried to move on from that day, the rest of America was just beginning to catch fire over what he had said. By midnight, his interview had taken over the internet. News alerts flashed across phones, talk shows replayed the clip on loop, and social media struggled to keep up with the flood of comments. Some called him brave, others reckless, but no one ignored him. Clips of his firm stare, calm delivery, and that now famous line, "You can't lead a country when you don't respect half the people living in it," spread across platforms like wildfire. It wasn't just trending, it was everywhere. The next morning, reaction montages filled broadcasts across the country. On one channel, a conservative commentator accused Jackson of trying to revive his career by attacking the president. On another, a civil rights lawyer called the moment a rare act of honesty in Hollywood. At a diner in Clearwater, Florida, two men watched the replay on TV. "He's got guts, I'll give him that," one said, stirring his coffee. "Yeah, but guts don't mean he's right," the other shot back. "You think Trump's the first president to say something wild behind closed doors?" It wasn't just political talk, it had become personal. Families argued at breakfast tables, co-workers whispered in break rooms, and even those indifferent to politics had an opinion. The clip dominated every screen, even overseas. A BBC anchor called it a rare Hollywood confrontation shaking Washington. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Samuel woke to hundreds of missed calls. His agent, his publicist, and half the entertainment industry wanted to know if he realized what he had done. Sitting at his kitchen table, scrolling through his phone, the comments were a mix of love and hate, praise from fans, threats from strangers, and dozens of celebrities quietly messaging support. His longtime friend, actress Denise Hollow, called first. "Sam, do you know what's happening online right now?" "Yeah," he said. "Apparently I started World War III from my chair." "You said what everyone's been too afraid to say. Just be ready for the fire that's coming." He chuckled softly. "I've been through worse fires." But the fire was already roaring. By noon, reporters had camped outside his home, news vans lined the street, microphones waving. When his door opened, Samuel said nothing, giving only a short wave before getting into his car. Inside the White House, it was a different scene. The president's communications team gathered in the press room, watching the clip over and over. "We need a response before noon," one aide said, slamming her notebook. Another sighed. "If we ignore it, it goes away. If we respond, it doubles coverage." Everyone knew which option Trump would choose. At 11, the first tweet hit, washed-up actor Samuel L. Jackson making up stories again. "Hollywood will say anything for ratings." Sad. Within minutes, it was headline news. Networks cut from regular programming to breaking coverage. On the morning news, anchor Todd Hensley read the tweet live. Well, that didn't take long. Across the country, the story divided America. Supporters of Samuel saw him as a truth-teller. Supporters of Trump saw him as a traitor. Comment sections were brutal. "Go back to acting," one read. Another said, "Finally, someone said what needed to be said." Samuel didn't respond, to the tweets, to the noise. He stayed quiet that evening. A clip surfaced of a reporter shouting at him outside a Beverly Hills restaurant. "Mr. Jackson, do you regret what you said?" He turned, looked straight into the camera, and said, "No. I regret not saying it sooner." That sentence went viral within hours. T-shirts and memes appeared online, bold white letters declaring the quote for all to see. The country was divided, but the momentum was entirely on his side. Every attempt to discredit him seemed only to make him stronger. Political analysts debated the situation all night. On CNN, one commentator said, "This isn't about a celebrity. This is about truth versus perception." Samuel L. Jackson just forced the country to choose which one it believes in. By midnight, an unexpected development surfaced. A leaked video from that Palm Beach golf event began circulating online, a short clip showing Trump, Samuel, and a few others laughing near the 10th hole. It didn't prove much, but it confirmed the encounter had happened. That was enough to make the story feel real. America had moved from gossip to evidence, from talk show chatter to a national conversation. Late night hosts had a field day. Comedian Troy Randall opened his monologue with, "Samuel L. Jackson just said what Alexa's been afraid to," and the audience roared. But beneath the laughter, something serious was unfolding. People were starting to ask what kind of comments a president could make in private, and who else might have heard them. Meanwhile, the White House was preparing to strike back harder than anyone expected. By sunrise, the tension between Hollywood and Washington had exploded into open warfare. Cable news anchors called it the biggest celebrity political clash since the Reagan years, while others said it was a masterclass in presidential outrage. Whatever it was, it dominated every conversation. Inside the West Wing, the atmosphere was electric, not energizing, but tense, with tempers flaring and staff whispering behind closed doors. Phones buzzed constantly, reporters camped outside the gates, every aide who passed the press area feeling the pressure. At 7:15 a.m., Trump stormed into the communications room. His hair uncombed, expression sharp, voice booming. "Who told me he was harmless?" he barked, slamming his phone on the table. "That actor just called me racist on live television." A staffer tried to calm him. "Mr. President, he didn't call you racist directly." Trump cut her off. "He didn't have to. You think people don't know what he meant?" He pointed to the TV screen, replaying Samuel's interview. The line, "You can't lead a country when you don't respect half the people living in it," scrolled beneath his reflection in captions. Communications Director Paula Myers stepped forward. "Sir, if we ignore it, the story will burn itself out. But if we respond," "I already responded," Trump interrupted, gesturing to his phone. "You saw my tweet?" Paula nodded cautiously. "Yes, sir. But the issue is that tweet made it worse. Networks are using it as proof that you're rattled." Trump's face reddened. "I'm not rattled. I'm angry. There's a difference." The room went silent, no one dared correct him. Outside, on the South Lawn, reporters shouted at Press Secretary Ron Rolston as he took his morning walk. "Ron, will the president apologize to Samuel L. Jackson?" he called. Rolston laughed dryly. "Apologize for what? The president didn't do anything wrong. Mr. Jackson is an actor trying to stay relevant." Another reporter pressed, "So you're saying the conversation didn't happen?" Rolston hesitated just long enough for cameras to catch it. "I'm saying Mr. Jackson's version of events is, let's say, dramatic." The clip aired on every major network within the hour. By noon, the White House had drafted an official statement denying that Trump made any inappropriate remarks at the golf event. But the wording was awkward. It didn't deny the meeting itself, only the characterization of what was said. That careful phrasing fueled even more questions. At a press conference that afternoon, Rolston tried to hold the line. "The president engages with countless individuals every day. He's confident in his relationships across industries and rejects any attempt to twist casual remarks into political scandal." A reporter shot back, "So you're confirming he did speak to Mr. Jackson?" Rolston adjusted his tie. "I'm confirming the president meets a lot of people." Laughter erupted among the press corps. Rolston's face flushed, and the briefing ended abruptly. In California, Samuel watched it all from his living room, blinds half drawn, TV muted. His friend Jerome called again. "They're losing it, man. Did you see that briefing? They look like they're guessing." "That's what happens when you tell the truth," Samuel replied. "People start panicking because they can't control it." Jerome hesitated. "You sure you want to keep this going? They'll dig up everything, old interviews, old photos, anything they can twist." "Let them," Samuel said. "I've got nothing to hide." That night, Trump held a rally in Pensacola. The crowd waved flags and signs, chanting his name. When he brought up Samuel, they erupted again. "I've known a lot of actors," Trump shouted, "but this one's got a bad attitude. He thinks he can insult your president and get away with it. Not on my watch." The crowd cheered, Trump grinning as he fed off the energy. "He's out there saying I said terrible things, lies, total lies. I was nothing but nice to him, asked him to join my foursome. But you know these Hollywood types, they don't appreciate anything. The clip went viral, not for the words themselves, but for the intensity behind them. His voice cracked, gestures sharp. To supporters, it was passion. To everyone else, panic. By the next morning, fact-checkers released side-by-side comparisons, photos of Samuel and Trump at the golf club, timestamps, witness accounts. Trump's denial was unraveling fast, but the administration doubled down. Fox hosts began labeling Jackson as Hollywood's new attack dog, while commentators accused him of trying to destroy unity. By now, the country was split down the middle. Half believed Samuel L. Jackson had exposed something dark, the other half accused him of fabricating the story for attention. Yet, while Washington spun itself into chaos, Samuel remained unnervingly calm. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't apologizing. He was waiting. 2 days after Trump's Pensacola rally, Samuel agreed to appear on Good Morning America. Producers had begged him for a follow-up, and after seeing the White House twist his words, he finally said yes. The studio was packed. Every seat filled, cameras ready, lights bright enough to wash the room in silver. When Samuel walked on stage, the audience rose to their feet. This wasn't applause for a movie star, it was for a man standing in a political firestorm and refusing to back down. Host Robin Torres began gently, "Samuel, it's been a wild few days. The president's called you a liar, said your story never happened, and even some networks are questioning your motives. Why speak out now?" He leaned forward, hands clasped. Because silence is how power keeps winning. People talk big behind closed doors, and the rest of us pretend not to hear it. I just decided I wasn't going to pretend anymore. Robin nodded, careful to maintain balance. You said others were present during that golf event. Are any of them willing to come forward? Samuel smiled faintly. Maybe. Let's just say I wasn't the only one who remembers how that day went. The audience murmured, so there were witnesses. Robin pressed. Samuel's gaze didn't flinch. I'm not naming names, but yeah. People heard what I heard. They're just scared. I get it. The moment you speak out against power, the whole machine turns against you. The segment aired live, and within minutes, clips flooded social media again. Hashtags like hashtag I stand with Samuel trended alongside hashtag Trump vs. Jackson. News outlets cut programming mid-hour to replay the exchange. In Washington, aides scrambled to prepare counterpoints. One even suggested proving Samuel wasn't at the club that day. But photographs had already confirmed he was there. As the press spun theories, something began to shift among Hollywood insiders. Quietly, recognizable names started showing support online. A famous director posted, "I was at that event." He's not lying. The post was deleted within hours, but screenshots spread instantly. Then another name surfaced, retired baseball legend Jerome Tate, the friend who had brought Samuel to the golf outing. TMZ tracked him down outside a training camp in Tampa. "Mr. Tate, were you with Samuel L. Jackson that day at Trump's club?" they asked. He hesitated, then answered, "Yeah, I was there." Did the conversation happen like he said? Jerome paused, clearly weighing his words. Let's just say I remember enough to understand why he said what he said. The clip went viral overnight. Suddenly, the story wasn't about claims anymore, it was about credibility. Two well-known figures were now on record hinting the conversation was real. Meanwhile, Trump's team grew more desperate. Another series of tweets called Samuel ungrateful, phony, and a Hollywood radical. But this time, even conservative outlets quietly questioned whether the White House was overreacting. That evening, Samuel sat down for dinner at a quiet Sherman Oaks restaurant with a few friends, no entourage, no security, just a man trying to enjoy a meal without headlines. A waiter approached shyly. "Mr. Jackson, I just wanted to say my mom watched your interview." She cried. She said she felt like someone finally said what we've all been thinking. Samuel smiled. "Tell your mom I said thank you." As the waiter left, Denise Hollow leaned over. "You realize you've turned into the people's actor now, right?" He laughed softly. "I didn't plan on it. I just told the truth." She looked at him seriously. That's exactly why it worked. The truth had ignited a fire Samuel hadn't expected, and once it did, he refused to water it down. "If you start walking back your truth," he said later in an interview, "it stops being truth. It becomes performance. And I've done enough pretending for a lifetime." The following day, the Los Angeles Tribune ran a front-page story titled "Jackson Won't Blink," painting him as a man standing against power, unshaken, unafraid. Cable networks picked it up, and by evening, political commentators were referring to him as the Hollywood conscience. Some mocked the label, others embraced it. Either way, Samuel was no longer just an actor. He was a voice. Meanwhile, whispers began circulating among insiders at the Palm Beach Golf Club. Employees who had worked the event spoke anonymously to journalists, mentioning tension and awkward remarks. One even hinted that security footage might still exist. Samuel didn't confirm or deny anything. He simply maintained his composure. In one interview, he said, "People will see what they need to see when they're ready. I don't need to convince anyone. The truth has its own timeline." With that, he walked off set, leaving viewers staring at their screens in silence. While Samuel stood calm in the storm, others in Hollywood were starting to tremble. Some had been there too, and they knew the truth was about to get louder. By the end of the week, the conversation had expanded far beyond politics. It was no longer just about Samuel and Trump, it had become about the entertainment industry itself. The whispers that usually stayed behind mansion gates were now leaking into public view. Los Angeles had become a battlefield of opinions. At morning coffee spots in Studio City, producers leaned close to one another, speaking in low voices. Some praised Samuel's courage. Others cursed his timing. "He just painted a target on all of us," one agent muttered, stirring his espresso. The story had become impossible to ignore. That Friday evening, the Screen Actors Guild held a private dinner at a luxury Beverly Hills hotel. What was meant to be a calm industry gathering turned into a political war zone. Attendees split into groups, arguing over whether Samuel had gone too far. Director Avery Knox slammed his drink down. He said what needed to be said. "You think anyone else would have the guts to challenge the president live on TV?" Veteran producer Leonard Hayes shook his head. "You don't pick a fight with the most powerful man in the world unless you're ready to lose everything. He's risking careers, not just his own." At the next table, whispers spread that one of the guests had actually been at the Palm Beach event. All eyes shifted to a film executive named Raymond Foxwell, a man known for being connected, quiet, and dangerously observant. He took a long sip of wine before speaking softly. What he said wasn't exaggerated. The room froze. A reporter who had somehow slipped into the dinner overheard it. Within hours, gossip sites ran headlines like "Top Producer Confirms Samuel's Account." Though Foxwell later denied saying it, the damage was done. Hollywood insiders began calling reporters, eager to share their own recollections. Each story added a new layer. One claimed Trump had made jokes about diversity quotas, another hinted at remarks about who controls which movies get made. The details differed, but the theme was consistent. The remarks were real, and they were ugly. Social media caught wind fast. Actors, directors, and comedians began taking sides publicly. A young actress wrote, "Samuel didn't speak up to start chaos. He spoke up because silence was already killing people's voices." Minutes later, a prominent conservative actor responded, "We're entertainers, not activists. Some people should stick to their lines." Just like that, Hollywood turned against itself. Television talk shows hosted fiery panels with mixed guests. One night, comedian Chris Vaughn and actress Linda Sterling argued live on air. "He told the truth," Linda said firmly. "We all know what's been said in those rooms, we just pretend it doesn't matter because we don't want to lose jobs." "Truth or not," Chris countered, "he's feeding division. You can't fix hate with more hate. The audience erupted, applause and boos colliding in the same space. The real turning point came when an anonymous source emailed several journalists, claiming to have audio from that Palm Beach golf event. According to the message, a security microphone near the clubhouse had accidentally recorded fragments of conversation. Most reporters dismissed it at first. Fake recordings were nothing new, but investigative journalist Renee Hallbrook of the Daily Chronicle managed to obtain the file. She didn't publish immediately. Late at night, she played it for a small group of editors. The audio was muffled and unclear, but certain phrases were audible and unmistakable. You could hear laughter, clinking glasses, and a familiar voice saying something about Hollywood pretending to be moral while cashing checks. The laughter faded, followed by a quieter sentence that made the room go still. People think they run this industry. They don't. They just make noise. That it wasn't crystal clear, but it was enough to send shivers down the spines of anyone listening. By morning, the clip had leaked online. Within hours, it had over 10 million views. The caption read, "Is this the Trump-Jackson conversation caught on tape?" While authenticity was still being verified, the timing couldn't have been worse for the White House. Networks played it in slow motion, analysts dissecting each word, debating whether it was real. At the same time, Trump's legal team issued a statement, calling the recording fabricated garbage and threatening lawsuits against anyone who broadcast it. The harder they tried to bury it, the faster it spread. Back in Hollywood, Samuel remained deliberately silent. His publicist told journalists, "Mr. Jackson isn't commenting on the recording." That silence only made people more curious. Behind closed doors, some of Samuel's friends urged him to release his own statement to control the narrative. He refused. "You don't fight truth with noise," he told Denise Hollow over the phone. "You just wait. The truth always makes noise on its own." That night, his old friend Jerome called again. "It's getting wild out here, man. People are scared. Some of the guys from that day are talking to lawyers." "They should be scared," Samuel said calmly, gazing out his living room window at the city lights. "Because if that tape's real, they can't hide anymore." Stretching endlessly down Ventura Boulevard, Los Angeles looked small for once, like a stage where everyone was finally being forced to drop their masks. But just as Hollywood tore itself apart, a new player stepped forward, someone with proof that could change the entire story forever. By now, this wasn't about celebrity gossip anymore. The story had outgrown Hollywood. It had become a mirror reflecting the country's deepest divisions. Every corner of America seemed to take a side. Every conversation carried tension. Cable news anchors began opening their shows with split screens, Samuel L. Jackson's calm interview on one side, Trump's furious rally clips on the other. It was an image of two Americas staring at each other, neither blinking. In small towns and big cities alike, people argued, not physically, but emotionally. In diners, churches, and barber shops, the debate sounded the same everywhere: was he right to speak out? At a barber shop in Dayton, Ohio, a group of men argued while the TV played the latest coverage. "He's an actor," one customer said, shaking his head. "He reads lines for a living. What makes him the moral authority?" The barber shot back, "He was there. You think he'd risk his reputation if it wasn't true?" "Man, people risk their reputations for attention every day," the first man countered. The argument got louder until the shop owner turned up the TV volume to drown them out. Across the country, demonstrations began forming. In Los Angeles, hundreds gathered outside the CNN building, holding signs reading "We Believe Samuel." In Washington, D.C., Trump supporters held their own rally, chanting Hollywood lies while waving flags. The divide wasn't just political, it was cultural, emotional, personal. Talk shows thrived on the drama. Networks invited legal experts, psychologists, even body language analysts to dissect Samuel's posture, his tone, whether he looked too composed to be telling the truth. Others analyzed Trump's hand gestures at rallies, claiming they revealed defensive aggression. Suddenly, everyone was an expert, yet behind all the noise, one fact kept resurfacing: every time the White House attacked Samuel, his approval among the public rose. His followers on social media tripled in a week. People began quoting his line, "Silence is how power keeps winning," like a mantra. In Philadelphia, high school students organized an open discussion on truth in leadership. Teacher Dana Lopez told her class, "What matters isn't who said it. What matters is that we're finally asking what kind of behavior we'll accept from people in power." Not everyone agreed. In Texas, a talk radio host ranted for 3 straight days about Hollywood elites trying to control the country. His listeners flooded the station with calls, vowing to boycott Samuel's movies. A few even burned DVDs live on social media, dramatic gestures that only made the story trend harder. Meanwhile, Samuel stayed composed. He wasn't doing press tours. He wasn't feeding the frenzy. He let the country argue while he stayed focused on something bigger, truth. At one point, his daughter called from Atlanta, "Dad, people at my job were arguing about you today." "Good or bad?" he asked. "Both," she said. "They're talking." He smiled quietly. "That's all I ever wanted." Back in Washington, Trump's inner circle was unraveling. The president's legal team was furious over the leaked recording. Advisors couldn't agree on a strategy. One aide suggested suing Samuel directly, another reminded them that would mean going to court and potentially exposing the recording publicly. Instead, Trump doubled down at a Tulsa rally. "These fake stories, these fake people, they're trying to divide us. But guess what? We're stronger than them." The crowd roared. But beneath that energy was fatigue. Even his most loyal supporters were uneasy. The rallies were louder but shorter, the outrage real but repetitive. Across the country, late-night comedians pointed out the exhaustion. One joked, "At this point, people are arguing about Samuel Jackson and Trump like they're rooting for rival sports teams." He wasn't wrong. Still, some moments broke through the chaos. During a Sunday service in Detroit, a pastor told his congregation, "Whether you love or hate either man, remember this, truth doesn't need a side. It just needs courage." Clips of that sermon went viral, earning millions of views. For the first time, people weren't arguing about politics, they were talking about conscience. The White House, sensing the shift, tried to steer the conversation elsewhere. They pushed new policy headlines, scheduled more rallies, even floated rumors about Samuel's political ambitions. But the public wasn't buying it. By the end of the week, reports showed something astonishing: a majority of Americans believed Samuel was telling the truth. That didn't mean they liked him, but they believed him. It wasn't that people suddenly liked him more, it meant they trusted him over Washington, and that terrified those in power. Late that night in Los Angeles, Samuel sat on his back porch, phone in hand, the screen's glow illuminating his face. Clips of protests and news debates scrolled past. He wasn't smiling. He was thinking. Denise called. "You've become a symbol," she said softly. "That's not what I wanted." He replied, "Maybe not," she said, "but symbols aren't chosen, they're made." He exhaled slowly. "If I'm going to be a symbol," he said, "I want it to stand for something true." The next morning, evidence appeared that would define exactly that, and for once, it didn't come from Hollywood or Washington. It came from someone with nothing to gain and everything to lose. The day started quietly, until it didn't. At 6 a.m., a local news station in Palm Beach broke a story that would soon dominate the nation. Michael Reyes, a 38-year-old maintenance technician at Trump National Golf Club, had come forward with what he called undeniable proof that Samuel L. Jackson's account was accurate. Michael had worked at the club for nearly a decade. He wasn't famous, wealthy, or politically involved, just a man who mowed lawns, fixed sprinklers, and kept to himself. But that morning, everything changed. Sitting down for an exclusive interview with the Palm Beach Ledger, his face half in shadow, Michael said, "I wasn't looking to get involved, but I saw the news, saw everyone calling him a liar, and I couldn't stay quiet anymore." "What did you see that day?" the reporter asked. Michael took a deep breath. "I was working near the 10th hole, setting up equipment for the evening dinner. The president was there with his group. I recognized Samuel L. Jackson right away. They were talking, laughing at first, but then it got quiet. That's when I heard, well, let's just say it wasn't what you expect from a president. He hesitated, then continued. Comments about who runs Hollywood, who makes the money, who complains about fairness. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't playful. It was mean. Are you saying you personally heard the president make offensive remarks? Michael nodded slowly. Yes. I heard every word. Within hours, the clip exploded online. Major outlets picked it up immediately. CNN ran the headline, "Golf Club Employee Confirms Jackson's Story." Fox News called it another liberal setup. Social media went into chaos, hashtags, debates, endless threads dissecting every sentence. The White House responded in less than 2 hours. A spokesperson dismissed it as another manufactured stunt, but privately, staffers were panicking. At the afternoon briefing, a reporter asked Ron Ralston, "Will the administration investigate these new claims?" Ralston sighed audibly. "We don't respond to every random person looking for 15 minutes of fame." "He's not random," another reporter fired back. "He's been employed at the club for 10 years. Are you saying a long-term employee would risk his job to lie?" Ralston stammered, then ended the briefing early. By evening, Michael Reyes was trending across every platform. Journalists dug into his background: no criminal record, no political donations, no personal gain. He had even refused payment for the interview. "I'm not here to make money," he said. "I'm here to tell the truth." Samuel watched the chaos unfold from home. Denise called immediately. "You seeing this?" "Yeah," he said quietly. "He just blew it wide open." Samuel exhaled slowly. That man had done what most in power wouldn't, tell the truth, even when he didn't have to. Later that night, Samuel called his old friend Jerome. "You remember that day," he said. "You know what was said?" "I do," Jerome replied. "He's risking everything to back up what we both heard." "That's bravery, man." Jerome was quiet. "You think it's going to change anything?" Samuel hesitated. "It already has." Across the country, talk shows speculated, analysts debated Michael's motives. Some praised his courage. One anchor said, "This isn't about politics anymore. This is about conscience." Meanwhile, Michael's life had flipped upside down. By morning, reporters surrounded his modest Lake Worth home. He looked uncomfortable before the cameras, repeating that he only wanted to tell the truth. His wife stood beside him. "We knew speaking out would be hard," she said softly, "but silence would have been worse." The image of the couple, two regular people standing on their porch against a storm of cameras, struck a chord with millions. In Washington, the president's team scrambled. Some advisors pushed for a lawsuit, others urged silence. But Trump wanted action. At 7 a.m., he tweeted, "Fake story. Low-level employee who's never met me making false claims for attention. Total scam." Photos emerged within hours showing Trump shaking hands with Michael at a 2019 Marine Award ceremony. The caption read, "Recognizing loyal staff who keep our courses beautiful." The internet erupted. Late-night hosts mocked the tweet. One joked, "You can't call the guy fake when you literally gave him a plaque." The audience howled, but amid the humor, something serious was brewing. That night, the Daily Chronicle released a report confirming the partial audio clip from the Palm Beach golf event had been verified by experts. Forensic specialists analyzed background noise, identified bird calls native to the area, and confirmed the timestamp matched the day of the event. Their conclusion, highly likely genuine. The story became unstoppable. Even those who had ignored it now had to confront it. Talk shows invited constitutional scholars to debate whether a president's private speech reflected his public responsibility. Op-eds flooded newspapers, asking whether moral integrity mattered as much as political strength. Through it all, Samuel stayed quiet, watching as the truth began speaking for itself. That night, sitting in his living room, he turned off the TV and whispered to himself. Sometimes you don't have to fight, you just wait for the truth to catch up. But while the truth was finally gaining ground, the political machine was just revving up. and it wasn't going down without a fight. By the next morning, the nation was glued to screens. The story had reached a boiling point. The leaked audio had been verified. The golf club employee's account had been corroborated. Even some of Trump's closest allies had gone silent. Something was shifting. The White House scrambled to contain the fallout, but every attempt to downplay it only brought new evidence to light. By midweek, 3 more witnesses from the golf event had come forward anonymously, each confirming variations of the same conversation. One was a catering manager who said he'd overheard remarks that were far from playful. Another was a security contractor who admitted he had been ordered to keep media crews away from the 10th hole that afternoon. Each new account added weight to the story, making official denials look increasingly desperate. Inside the Oval Office, tension ran high. Communications Director Paula Myers paced the carpet, papers in hand. "Sir," she said carefully, "this is spiraling. If we keep fighting, it looks like we're hiding something." Trump slammed his fist on the desk. "We are not hiding anything. They're lying, and we're going to prove it." "Prove it how?" Paula asked quietly. He paused, staring at her. "We sue everyone. Jackson. That employee. The papers. The networks. All of them." Paula exhaled slowly. "Sir, suing them will open discovery. Their lawyers can subpoena records, communications, even security footage. You really want that?" He didn't answer. He turned to the window, staring at his own reflection in the glass. Meanwhile, at Samuel's house in Sherman Oaks, the air was eerily calm. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing for days. News producers, political figures, activists, even old co-stars he hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone wanted a quote, everyone wanted a soundbite. Samuel remained silent, not out of fear, but principle. The story no longer belonged to him. It belonged to the people who had witnessed it. Still, his team convinced him to make one more statement that evening. He appeared on national television for what would become one of the year's most watched broadcasts. He sat across from journalist Angela Reed on Nightline Forum, the same program where it had all begun. Studio lights reflected off the polished desk. The air felt thick with expectation. Angela started carefully. "Samuel, this all began with one comment on this very show. Since then, the president has denied everything, and yet the evidence keeps piling up. What do you say to people who think you made this political?" Samuel leaned back, thoughtful. "It's only political if you believe respect has a party. I didn't speak to take sides. I spoke because leadership comes with accountability. If you can't handle that, you don't deserve the job." The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Angela pressed on. "Do you think this will change anything?" His expression softened. "Maybe not immediately. But it's made people talk. It's made them think. That's how change starts, not with noise, but awareness." He paused, then looked directly into the camera. "You don't need to be famous to call out wrong when you see it. You just need to care enough not to stay quiet." The crowd erupted in applause. Some stood, some cried. Even Angela appeared moved. Back in Washington, aides watched in tense silence. Paula turned off the TV halfway through. "He's winning this," she murmured. Ron Ralston, the press secretary, shook his head. "He's not just winning, he's rewriting the conversation." That night, polls reflected a massive swing in public sentiment. Even among moderate voters, trust in the president had dropped. Samuel's approval rating skyrocketed, but the tipping point came the following day when the Daily Chronicle released a full, unedited version of the golf club audio. 6 minutes long, with no doubt about the voices. Laughter, golf swings, and then Trump's unmistakable cadence. "These people in Hollywood act like saints until the cameras turn off. They don't care about morals, they care about money. They pretend to hate me, but I made them richer than ever." And then the quieter, chilling line, "America doesn't need more truth-tellers. It needs entertainers. That's what people really want." The clip ended abruptly, with Samuel's voice cutting in, then maybe that's the problem. No edits, no ambiguity, real and raw. Networks interrupted regular programming to air the recording in full. Analysts went silent mid-segment. Even conservative hosts struggled to spin it. For a moment, the noise stopped, and the truth simply stood there. The next morning, Samuel's publicist called. Every outlet wants an exclusive. They're calling this the quote of the decade. Samuel shook his head. I'm done talking. The story has told itself. He turned off his phone and went outside, standing under the early California sun. Neighbors waved across the street, quietly clapping. For the first time since the interview, he allowed himself a small smile. Later that afternoon, reporters shouted questions at the White House press gate. Does the president stand by his remarks? One asked. The press secretary hesitated, looked down, and walked away without answering. Cameras captured it all, a silent spokesperson, avoiding the truth. By evening, editorials flooded newspapers from coast to coast. Headlines called it the moment America chose sincerity over spin. When Hollywood spoke truth to power, the 6-minute tape had shaken the presidency. For once, the noise meant something. And as the nation processed the fallout, one fact was clear: the story was no longer about politics, it was about courage.